Welcome to this episode of the Level Design Podcast, in which we talk about a certain handsome bald man with killer looks. No, not me. We're talking about all things Agent 47 with Hitman 2's level designer, Mette Andersen. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Level Design Show. This is a very special episode. We're talking about a game and a level designer on a game that is one of my favorites all the way since 2000. I remember playing Agent 47. So joining me in this episode is Rob McLaughlin, lead designer at the Chinese Room.
Hello.
Also joining me is Valentina Chrysostomou, lead designer and AAA games and indie games, and also at Command Studio. Woo woo!
Everything included. Hi, everybody.
And the lovely Jonathan Wilson, level designer for Hangar 13. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, everyone.
And most importantly of all, please welcome Mette Andersen, who has been a level designer at IO Interactive for how long?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And you've just left on maternity leave, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going well. I am lying down a lot. And hello, everyone.
Thank you for coming on the show. This is indeed a pleasure because Hitman is one of my favorite games apart from one level, which is the bank level. Which,
I ruined it.
Not because of anything that the design is because that's the one level. I think I killed everyone or something.
I think you're playing it wrong,
Mark. I was not a hitman.
Yeah.
I was not a hitman. I was not like, the world of assassination. I was just throwing cups at people, pens at people.
Not burgers?
I think
there were so many.
Yeah, I think I was just throwing everything at people because I was not prepared for that level, and I loved it. But I think that was just
I'm
one
sorry.
of those. No, that's my fault. I was like, oh, I am the knight. I shall get you. And then no. Then I was like,
and then the bank hit
coming.
you.
Yeah, the bank hit me, and I was basically running around the bank, waving my arms, going help. And dying very quickly.
Oh no!
But I think I'm now going to have to replay it. Put more of a serious face when I.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. Yeah.
Try to be an assassin.
Yeah. What I think what freaked me out about that level was walking in and there was like glass rooms. I was like going, oh.
Oh no, my enemy.
Yeah. they can all see.
I can't do anything there. You didn't use the frosting? Like there's like a button you can frost the glass.
I think I did find that out. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I think in one of them you go for an interview for it, and it's been a little while. But anyway, sorry. That is indeed an amazing game, and you've been kind of quite keen the last 5 years in getting Hitman 2 out, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined, we were working. Well, they were working at that time on Hitman 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we finished that, shipped it out the door, and then worked on Hitman 2, and I also got to work a little bit on Hitman 3 as well. It's been a crazy ride since 2016.
You must know Agent 47 very well by this point.
I feel like by this point, I know him pretty well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's I really love that game. It's really strange. I never thought I would love a game like Hitman. Like it hasn't really been my genre. I thought I've always liked puzzle games and stuff like that. And then when I got a chance to work on Hitman, I had to take it and find out what is this thing. And it's like the AAA game that we make in Denmark. And I just completely fell in love with it. It's such a strange game because it's just gonna surprise you so much, I think. And it's just not what you think when you start out. I don't know if everyone else had that same experience with the game, but I really feel like it surprised me quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's one of these games that, and by the way, massive fanboy of Hitman, so the rest of the hosts are going to have to start like bundling me into a cupboard somewhere. But it's one of those games that actually taught me patience.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when I started out, it was like, yeah, go kill everyone.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm in Paris and there's thousands of people, or in a boat. And I was like, oh wait, hold on a minute. I am not this indestructible killing machine.
Yes, exactly. I think that's probably the first thing that hits people when they play Hitman. It's been, I think the marketing, at least back in the day, has been very much focused on this action fantasy. And I think people would play the game and they would just die really fast, because it is like a almost impossible game to play as a shooter, and it's just not how it's supposed to be played. And when I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking a lot about, the bank, and how we designed that. And it was really one of our key pillars for it, that it had like a slow way of playing, because we didn't have a lot of space. I mean, it is a huge bank, like when you compare it to normal banks, it's insanely big. But if you compare it to Hitman levels, it's quite small. So we really had to have like every square meter really count. So we had to design it for like a slow way of playing. And I think that may also have been a little bit of surprise. I don't know, with the cup throwing, maybe it's even slower. I don't know, or we just designed it wrong. I don't know.
I think the problem exists between this keyboard and this chair rather than in any other situation.
But I totally agree with that observation, and I think it's important as a designer working on the game, an important realization to reach really fast, that it is slow gameplay that we're designing for.
And it requires a lot of planning too, right? That's what I kind of noticed when I started playing it. That I don't know, I usually don't plan, even when it's a stealth game. I love stealth games, but it's something that, because the AI has a behavior and they'll either wander or they'll dwell somewhere, and they have different kind of schedules, if you can name them, if you can call them that. So it's all about figuring out what they do, and it's just so much information that, and you can choose which information also to choose, right? It's also like the opportunities or whatever else you can find in the levels that you'll stumble on, and it just requires planning. Do you think planning is a fun gameplay aspect that Hitman has? Is that why people like the recent ones a little bit more than the older ones? Or what would you say is like the main thing?
I think planning is a huge part of it. I think it's also something that could be formalized even more in that game. I think it's something that we talk about as being part of the core loop of playing the game. That the player needs to have space and time to plan all the time, and they need a chance to see a pattern. They need a chance to just watch something repeat and then figure out, oh, okay, this is my opportunity. Like one of the opportunities that I think is it's like a type of opportunity. Because when you've made a lot of them, like our mission stories or whatever you call them, but when you've made a lot of them, you start seeing these patterns. And I think one that's just like a good old solid one is that you have a target that's moving around, and in their loop, they want to do something that's dangerous, and something is keeping them from doing that. And then if you just remove that element that's stopping them from doing the dangerous thing, like drinking the wine that you can poison or whatever, go skydiving or whatever, then you will get the kill, and you get to just watch that repeat and repeat, and then at a point you're gonna go, oh, of course the wine, that's what I should go for. So yes, I think planning is a big part of it. One thing that's also really hard to do in these games that are realistic, or whatever you want to call it, like games that are trying to simulate the world as we know it, and not having a very strong UI that's constantly telling you, go here, do this, do that. I think is that communication is extremely hard. Like it's when I was designing together with the team, like different opportunities and levels and all these situations, we were always stuck with this, like, how do we really communicate this? This is what you have to do in a good way. And I bet that's what all designers do on in most games. But here we would often talk about the situations, like the situations that we know from everyday life. And in the bank, for instance, we have the job interview, and also the situation where you can get fired, because we wanted to just play with your expectations, because that's really the best tool that we have. Because how else are you going to see these opportunities in the world?
So that the player has some reference of their own experience to see what will happen by what they understand.
Exactly. Like, how else are you gonna nudge the player if not by saying, hey, like, I wonder, like, this looks kind of like a job interview that's going on over here. That would be a fun way to get into this. into this bank, because you know, you have access. So it's like a, yeah, you're constantly playing on these expectations and cliches and stereotypes and all this stuff to help communicate what's going to happen. Because again, like, yeah, we're not giving the player that much in these, like, you know, it's slow, you have to plan, you have to be able to see the patterns. We have the guide to kind of go, okay, well, if you can't spot this, then, you know, you're gonna get help. But yeah, it's really, really important, and something that we discussed a lot before I stopped.
And how do you plan a game that's all about planning? So how do you plan the flow of it? Because it's so overwhelming. You can go anywhere, listen to anything. Are there pointers that can kind of guide you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, like, you know, level design, where you can just funnel, like we have these funnels, we have these places that we know you're gonna go there eventually, you're gonna overhear this eventually. We have different things to kind of, you know, draw the player's attention to these moments. And we try and generally to have more than one thing pointing to an opportunity. It's just nice if you have like multiple ways of revealing it, or at least things that are referencing it in a lot of places in the levels. I really think dialogue is such a huge part as well of the game, and it also requires that level designers and the writers work very closely to make sure that that the dialogue will get that exposure, the story will get the exposure, and the story and the levels need to be like, you know, hand in glove. They really need to fit together, I think, for that to work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also the sub stories, right? Because I'm trying to remember, and forgive me, I played this Sapienza a long time ago, so I can't remember all the. But there's a baker that you can annoy, so you can get into the back of his shop. That gives you access to another area.
There's a butcher, and there's an ice cream shop. The ice cream shop is also gonna help you. You can get a disguise there, and yeah, it's like there's different different little stories like this. Oh, you mean the chef Rocco?
Yes, I beg pardon, the chef. He gets you right into the house and stuff.
And there's the sister who's yelling Rocco, like in the beginning, and yeah, I remember that like authors and our AI game designer, they were just so annoyed with that, so they ended up making multiple versions of that line, because it was such an insane funnel that like it's like 99% of all players will definitely hear her yell this one-liner every time. Yeah.
And that's one of the interesting things about Hitman as a game, is that in a lot of games, you dying is a failure state.
Yeah.
But in Hitman, dying is just a reset, and it's like, okay, fine, I died, but now I can see that I can reset the loop, yes. And that actually helps me, because I can now see that
exactly.
You know, I could go back in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like we talked a lot about Groundhog Day as like like as a way of understanding how the player experiences the world a little bit, and how it's okay for things to be the same, like for that, like you know, that whole situation with Rocco and the same line repeating. It's annoying, yes, but it's also kind of important that some things will just repeat and be exactly the same, because you as a player need to be able to time things and just go, like, kind of like it's like a crazy Mission Impossible kind of thing, where you're a time traveler and you know how everything's gonna go down. Because you're right, like dying in Hitman is just part of the game. Like we are designing things for you so you can play it several times, or use information from one playthrough in another version, right? So it's totally yes, and that's also hard to tell the player that dying is okay. That's actually really something that we also discussed. Like, is there any way we can make dying better, like more okay?
Well, I mean, if you don't do The Last of Us, kind of like
exactly,
kind of, like you zoom in on like flesh tearing, you're like, okay, no, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You said a really interesting thing about that chef encounter, where you said that it was an insane funnel, so too many players played that way. How do you approach structuring a level in terms of the number of funnels and where they go to? Was there a kind of system of layers that you would have multiple funnels that get through to each layer, or how did you go about making sure that not every single player did exactly the same thing?
Well, it's a really good question. I think, like, in general, we would just Well, it's very like case by case, and it would we would change the starting location many times before release.
Ah,
So we would kind of build a level, maybe have
wow.
an idea of the starting location, and then we could change that a million times. And of course, there's new starting locations. So when you play it a little bit, you unlock new starting locations, and that's also a way to make sure that the playthroughs are going to be a little bit different. But then again, like it's sometimes it's also nice to know that the opportunity that we would also often talk about the 99% opportunity, that there would be one that we really wanted players to play. For instance, in Paris, it was I think it was Helmut Kruger that we really wanted players to get, because it was also an opportunity that we'd spent so much time on, and we knew it would be a cool experience, and it would be a nice way to kind of see a lot of the level. It would be a nice like little
So the
intro.
subtle posters, the subtle like 60-foot tall posters of helmets.
And everyone telling you how much you look like him.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So often it's pretty nice. I mean, I don't know if it's just it's nice for the designer to know that at least they're gonna get this thing. But every level would have like a 99% or 90%. I can't remember what we called it, but something that we knew players would probably bump into, and we knew that this would be like a nice sightseeing opportunity. This would take you far, show you around, maybe even have you deliberately bump into other opportunities, and just hoping it wouldn't derail you. That was also a little like hard to balance. Like we don't want to, push you on to like a new path, but we want to let you know that you should play this again when you're done. Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to balancing a level in Hitman, like obviously you've got a lot going on, you've got a lot of stories, you've got a lot of systems going around, and obviously you have the main target, your objective. Is it ever a worry that you may overwhelm the player with everything that's going on? Because it's like how, like I imagine trying to I love getting lost and immersed in the world and seeing all these systems and kind of poking them and see how far they can go. But I imagine trying to come up with a rational of how you balance that out so you're not constantly overwhelming the players, a quite difficult thing to do.
Yes.
And it must be a very fine balance to strike.
Yes, very much so. And it's not like there's like a clear recipe, because we're also trying to mix everything up. So the moment you found like a really good recipe for a level, you're kind of like scrapping it and starting over with the next one, because no, it needs to be different, right? But yeah, it is really hard to do. I think there are some levels where it was very deliberate, that we wanted players to get lost. And I can't, again, like I'm one out of many level designers, so I can't speak on behalf of all the designers and directors and who's been working on that game. But for instance, Mumbai in season 2, like that was deliberate, that players should get lost. No, that was really important for the lead on that one. That it was just the players needed to feel like they got lost in Mumbai, for that to also feel real and impactful. And the same in Marrakesh. There's also these points where you can get a little bit lost. Even in Sapienza, I kept getting lost. So I think that's part of the experience. But yes, you want to balance it out. You want to give the player a chance to get to a vantage point and get an overview and kind of feel like, also if you played it a lot, you want to give players a chance to recognize landmarks and both sound and visuals to kind of get to where they want to go.
It's giving the player a chance to master the space, right? Like you
Yes.
mentioned Mumbai, and you do feel lost when you first go to Mumbai. If it's the first time you ever play it, you don't quite. It's a great place to walk around, but you do get turned around quite a bit. However, when I go back and replay it, then I'm starting to become familiar, and like you said, the sights, the sounds, so it does pay off overall. And Mumbai is actually a fascinating mission purely because for all the targets, I think that has you going to different points throughout the city, so it's spread across the space.
Yeah, it's like it's extremely interesting. Like we did this analysis at a point between Hitman 1 and Hitman 2, where we had this downtime period where people had time to kind of reflect before moving on to a new project. And we had a chance to really think about what worked in season 1. And then we did this whole exercise where we tried to analyze it, come up with a terminology as well, which is something that I think like everyone should do. it was extremely helpful for me at least. And people could use it or they could not use it. It was up to them. But we would just analyze season 1 and try to find patterns and then give them names. And we saw that we had 2 types of targets. We had dwellers and roamers. So dwellers are kind of staying in what we would call a fortress, and roamers would roam the levels. And Mumbai is a level that has 2 fortresses and 2 dwellers. Which is like we saw was like a little bit uncommon. Normally we would kind of, if we had 2 targets, it would normally be one of each. Like in Paris, where you have a dweller, Dahlia, who's upstairs doing the auction, and then you have Novikov, who's sort of wandering around the whole palace, to kind of also cater to 2 very different playstyles. But Mumbai has 2 fortresses and 2 dwellers, which is also means that it's a level that's going to take a long time. Like it's going to require a lot of planning, and you have to like really change the way you think from these 2 different fortresses that you have to infiltrate. So it's actually like a really interesting mission, something that you could even discuss, like, should it have been 2 different missions in one level almost? So you could kind of like, okay, achievement done. I did this over here and I'm going to go for the other one. Or it's such a big level. It's insanely huge and beautiful. I was really impressed by that.
All the way from Paris, from the show. I mean, that was the first level that you guys really worked on, right? You like really got Paris down.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, several. Well, Paris changed so much. It was, I think, my older brother who worked at IO before I did worked on Paris, and like the first prototype, and it has just evolved so much. It used to be enormous. Like it used to be like a city with like different locations, and the palace was just one of the locations in the city. And the palace is insanely large. Like it's such a big level. And there was a metro and you could travel around. Like like that level has just changed so much that yeah, in a way that became the prototype for season 1. It underwent like a lot of changes. And then Sapienza was kind of worked on a little bit simultaneously, kicked off a little bit later. I'm not sure how that worked, but those 2 levels had like a lot of time to mature and to kind of find their recipe. And then I joined like very late. Like I was, when I came in, Paris was quite done. There was still a lot of work to do. And then we added opportunities for Paris. So the opportunity system was something that was created as like user feedback got in for Paris, and players were just like completely lost and didn't know what to do, and it was so big. So that's how opportunities kind of emerged.
I was going to ask you, did you ever find a really bad recipe?
A really bad recipe? Yeah,
like the 2 fort dwellers. Is there anything that you shouldn't design into a Hitman game? If you ever do that, you can guarantee
2 roamers
spoils the level.
I think
2 roamers in a fortress.
I think there was some. No, not in those. Not like I don't think you can say that any of those are wrong. I think they're just very specific ways you have to do it. So if you're designing one of them like you would design the other, then you're gonna have some issues. So like for instance, if you're designing a level for a dweller and you're basically using all the roamer recipes, it's not really gonna work out that well. Yeah, so it's like it's more of a like, you know, I don't think there's anything you can't do for a cool level. I think you just really need to be very, very attentive of what is the strengths and what are the pitfalls like of doing the different types of designs. Like I think doing a 2 fortress level is hard, and it requires a lot of thinking about, okay, and we had a lot of discussions, especially after Marrakesh, because the 2 fortresses were quite divided. So it meant that when you had completed one fortress, you wouldn't really have much of an there wouldn't be like an upside, like there wouldn't be like an advantage. Yeah. So if you had infiltrated one fortress, you wouldn't necessarily have an advantage for the next one. So that's something that we discussed a lot. So if we were going to do that again, we had to make sure that there would at least be some kind of disguised tier that would overlap somehow.
Right. So you've managed to get the, I don't know, cowboy hat from one fortress that lets you into the, or at least it gets you into the gate, or gets you up the left or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So at least like one layer, like the lowest tier, just that is fine. But you just need something, some kind of advantage to kind of, exactly, keep the momentum and not have the player go like, oh fuck, I'm starting all over. Like it's like it could feel a little bit disheartening, because, and you all know this as designers, that often you design something and you go, well, everyone's gonna know how to do this, and then when they play it, they're just like, what? Like, this is so hard. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And like, what? But you're just supposed to, okay, never mind. It's really, really hard to like to balance difficulty. I think it's also because you have the different play styles and you don't know what the player will like latch onto when they start the game, and you have no idea what the player is going to do. You don't know what the AI is going to do. That's also something that we kept encountering, that all our great ideas for these story moments and these very funneled moments and scripted moments, they would just kind of not work because those darn players would just do something.
I guess with that in mind, obviously, you're already managing lots of systems. I would imagine every level, given how big they are, must have extensive usability testing. Because as much as we're all designers and we can all try and think of as many eventualities of how someone's going to interact with our content as we can, you know, as soon as a fresh set of eyes goes on it, they're going to discover the millions of things you overlooked.
Yeah. We did when we had Square Enix money.
Yeah.
Yes, there would still be like testing and stuff like that, but it's like it's you know, it's not only just like literally expensive, but it's also expensive to spend the time like vetting them and writing down the proper questions and actually taking it seriously and then responding to it and all that stuff. Like we would try like everything we could to get that feedback as much as possible. But I mean, like everyone thinks we could always do more when it comes to user testing. Like you never really feel like you've done enough, I think.
I guess that was going to be a slight other question. Like, how far is too far? Like in supporting the player and all the stuff they can do.
God.
Like, is there a point where you, like, because obviously you said we all want to go that extra mile and we all want to keep going down that rabbit hole. And we know we could go on forever because, like you said, it's thinking of the logical things you would encounter in these spaces. And in the real world, you could think of a scenario to do with anything. Was there ever a limit to where you would stop?
You mean like level of detail, like level of like
kind of, yeah. But also just how far you let the player like go before they go beyond the boundaries of the level.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the question that's just gonna hurt the hearts of all level designers. Like in the softest spot that we have, and it's just we have had countless conversations with each other about this stuff, and sometimes you would have the luxury of being able to just like, no, if they do this, something has to happen. Like I can't live with myself if we don't do this. And so,
no one's going to notice, right? The absence of something is not something that someone notices, right?
No,
is the bad implementation of something that they will notice.
Yeah, but it's like, so like you sign a contract with the player when you start designing something, and you just it really feels like you're letting them down or just breaking that contract if you're not like giving them that thing that you just know they're gonna be looking for. Like it's like we've like been each other's therapists almost, like when people were like, oh, I'm not allowed to finish this thing and I can't live with it, and I'm just gonna come in on weekends and just get this little weird thing in because it needs to be there, and it's like it's a constant like balancing for us as well, our health as well. But yeah,
when it comes to creating a level from scratch, for example, you get assigned like the bank level, and do you already have some supporting systems like the opportunity system to be able to add it into your level and say and then prototype it, so when someone plays it, it's like, oh, this is how it's meant to play out? Or do you have or are the tools not good enough or not ready yet for you to visualize your level design?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can totally just like plop in the opportunity system and just yeah, show this is basically the gist of it. Yeah, we try to do pretty early like prototyping of that.
Yeah, because I can imagine if you just make the level, it's like, oh, you're meant to kill this person.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
And oh, you're meant to hear this dialogue here, but nothing is playing here.
Yeah.
Or you're meant to, there's gonna be some objects here where you can poison them, but there's nothing there yet. Like, is that something that you can easily put into a Hitman level just so you can have something? So when someone plays, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I can poison them, but not exactly right now. But if I do it, this will happen. Or how much do you add on a first pass of a Hitman level? How much is enough to show what this is going to be?
I think that's something, well, again, like I'm not at IO anymore, but that's at least something that also was discussed quite a lot. Because also if you want to convince people internally, it's really hard for some people to just see boxes and robot voices and stuff like that. And you're just trying to go like, imagine this, just really good. Yeah, that can be really hard, but just for us and for other level designers, so then at least you have a frame of reference. You kind of know that everyone can kind of imagine what this is going to be like, or you can reference other opportunities that you've done earlier. But yeah, like just in Greybox, we try to have these like stand-in set pieces for interaction and the guide on top of it. Yeah, so we try to get something in really fast that is really, really ugly and crude, just so people can get like a gist of it. It is really hard to get people to imagine what you're thinking. Like it's just yeah, that's really really tricky.
When it comes to level design, I can only think of a few games that, for me at least, are like probably the hardest, like to create, like the Hitman games and maybe the Dishonored games, something that has a lot of systems that are still not working and the levels that are still not finished, and you kind of have to work on everything at the same time, and you don't know how it's going to play until it's kind of finished, right? Because I mean, you have a bit more freedom and a bit more understanding if you're creating a linear game. Level design can still be smart, but it's still, you have a feeling of what it's going to be like from the beginning, maybe. But when it comes to huge levels like that, where do you even start from? How do you even plan ahead? Or what do you even start creating? It's probably, for me at least, it would be one of the hardest things as a level to do.
I think like the way we started with the bank, just really early, like we just found out it's a bank. We haven't done anything yet. Was that we would talk about the different disguises, the different people. So it would be like a people-based thing. What kind of social moments do we want? Like so. And I think the IT crowd came up on that board like as like the second, like after banker or something, because they're really fast.
I have an admission. That was the people that I murdered very badly.
No.
Of course.
But they're the best.
Poor innocent. I know.
they're the backbone of the entire company. but yeah, so we would just like lay out all the different disguises that we would want in a level, like all the different departments. We had an HR department that I think we ended up cutting or like moving around or change. I think that just became the job interview. And we had like an R&D area, and we had like all these different people and situations that we wanted to have. And then when we had all of our disguises or professions or people or whatever you want to call it, we would try to say, okay, who should be close to each other? And then from that, we would start going, okay, well, what do we have in our heads, like physically, and like what are we imagining when we're thinking of a bank? And then we started like exchanging like either personal experiences. One of the developers had been in a bank in New York, and he was blown away by how awesome it was. And he was actually one who came up with the bank as well. And we would talk about movies like Inside Man. In Ghost, they also go to a bank. That was like some pretty cool images and stuff like that. So, and then when we had all of that, we would start going, okay, well, now we have to divide our disguises into tiers. And let's say we have 3 floors. Where should they be? Who should be close to the CEO? She's gonna be in her inner sanctum, as we would call it, the dwellers little spot, and who's going to be right when you like enter, who's going to be the civilian and the public face of the company, and then we're going to try and work towards those two extremes. And then of course we had to have the vault as well. And I will say, like, speaking of the whole like do's and don'ts that Rob, you mentioned, like,
hold on a second.
yeah, I
Just
just remembered something. A terrible thing. No, I just remembered in Sapienza, like that level did really well in general. Like people really loved playing Sapienza. But there was like one thing about Sapienza that we will always like, that people would just always reference as like, never do that again. And that was the virus as the third objective, that you had to go and take out the virus. And I think there were like 2 or 3 ways of doing it, but they were just, people got so annoyed with having to go to the virus and it being like a static thing. So in the bank, we had a dweller and we had a static object. I think that's not a good idea. If I had to like just having that is not a good idea. But what we did do, that I cannot take credit for that idea, but that was to make an alternate like version of our objective and saying, well, instead of going down physically and removing the data core that is in the vault of the bank, you can also take out 3 data drives that are on the target and on 2 roamers. So in that way we could like mix it up a little bit. But yes, but like basing everything on disguised tiers and professions is like I think it's a classic way of doing it. I think at least I've remember that that people at least did it before me, because it was not my idea. So so yeah.
You talked about the design process and how you were also dedicated to putting in these little touches that you really wanted to get into the level.
Yeah.
When you've released the game, obviously it's out there in the wild and you can watch people playing it on YouTube. Is there anything that you saw that surprised you or amazed you about how people played your level? Or
the briefcase for me.
The humming briefcase. I love that. Oh man, I remember seeing it being filed as a bug in our bug filing system, that the humming briefcase was gonna get fixed, and I was just like, what? And like signed petitions and marched down to people's desks and like, you cannot remove this. This is too precious. Like this is hilarious.
Think of all the contents.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I mean, I would always get extremely surprised. Like, I think we all had experiences also with our Easter eggs, that they would just get like discovered in seconds, and you're like, what? Like this, I thought it would take them months to find this, and it just literally took them a day. So yeah, I mean, I think the dedication would always like overwhelm us and surprise everyone.
I swear that there's a trick of, you know, the 3 pigs trick?
No.
You get 3 pigs, you mark one with the number 1, the other one with the number 2, and then the other one with the number 4, and you let them free, and, you know, let them loose. So then everyone's looking for the pig with the number 3 on it, which doesn't exist. So I think that's the way that you have to do, you know, Easter eggs. Saying like, oh yeah, there's totally 4 things that you have to pick up. Just don't put in the 3rd one.
That's mean.
Yeah.
I think that's mean. I think there's like a code, an Easter egg code, I think.
They'll probably go through the walls, they'll break through the collision just to find Easter eggs.
Yes, it's,
okay, I won't do that. I apologize to all the players out there.
The internet would explode and get very angry at you, Mark,
yeah,
if you
I think
did that.
so.
You know, at this time of day, I don't want that.
No.
That'll be a bad thing. So there's one thing that I wanted to ask, and I don't know how the teams are split up at IO, but there's kind of another side of Hitman, which is a sniper. Hammerstein?
Yeah, Himmelstein. Yeah.
Himmelstein.
Yeah.
Which kind of weirdly, in my mind, I've been inside that whole castle as normal Hitman level, but then I realized, no, I've just played it as a sniper. But it's, again, all these systems working through, which is kind of interesting to split. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's thematically correct, but it's kind of a whole different side of Hitman, isn't it? Is
yeah.
Did you design any of those games?
No,
Or
I didn't.
Are they
I did.
okay?
No, I know the people who did.
Oh,
They're very nice and smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does it use the same systems as the main game? I presume.
Yeah, and the guys who made, I can't remember the names of all of them, but yeah, there's Himmelstein, then there's Port something.
The pen, yeah, and then there's the Crime and Punishment, the one in the jail, isn't it?
And that was the last one. Yeah, there's those three. And I like and the designers who made those three are also make regular Hitman levels. So they also obviously have the same connotations as you would as a player who also plays the other Hitman levels. And they're using some of the same systems, but obviously there had to be some changes specifically for that. So distractions that only work in the sniper levels. But I mean, in theory, a lot of it is it's playing with by the same rules in a way as the normal Hitman game. I think all of them would have loved to make those into real levels, or because they're pretty cool, all of them, I think, and could definitely work.
Yeah, oh definitely.
Yeah.
I still want to put the little caveman that appears that lives in the grotto in what's that? I'm sorry if that's an Easter egg.
No spoilers, man.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, I think statute of limitations on a whatever 4-year game. Come on. What was the not most favorite, but I think giving the vocabulary to all these systems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is the way to go in any game development? Because we have descriptions of such as sizes of things, or very mechanical kind of descriptions. But you're talking about kind of complex interactive systems, like design patterns in a way.
Yeah, I've also been thinking a lot about why that's the case. But I have a humanist background. I think when I look at games, I think a lot about human behavior, and maybe a little bit of a different angle as well. But I mean, that's at least for the social aspects of looking at levels. For instance, we also talk about these different types of social spaces in Hitman that in general, we have two different types. You have a public space and you have a private space. And your job as Hitman is to go to the private space. That's pretty clear, pretty fast, that you infiltrate. But that doesn't mean that the public space isn't extremely important as well, because that's going to help you figure out what the private space works like as well. So for instance, the front of an ice cream shop and the back of an ice cream shop, it's the same place, but it's going to have a public area and it's going to have a private area. And I think discussing that and actually naming that and saying well, the fact that I can stand here in front of the counter and see someone in disguises in an area that I can't get to is saying quite a lot. It just the game is telling me if I can get that disguise, I can go there. And I think talking about that, giving it names, giving it a terminology, I think is important. And this whole thing, of course, with the different types of targets and different types of levels, I think is also important. It's getting a little bit closer to the more technical part, but it is. We are humans, in case people didn't know, and you're playing a human-ish person, and you are dealing with humans. You're trying to get close to a human.
Well, you're dealing with human behaviors, right?
You're mimicking human behaviors, as 47 is. He is trying to find out what's normal to do, and so are you. So you're kind of in the same boat as him. He's not in a way. Sure, he always has a quick answer, or kind of a low answer, grumpy answer. He is also trying to figure out how to manage the social scene and becoming a male model, or a dishwasher or whatever he has to. He actually doesn't care what he's becoming.
He has no pride.
No, exactly. And I think that's what works, and that's also how we can get him into silly outfits. It's because he doesn't care if he has to dress up as a flamingo mascot. If
Right.
it gets him close
My
to
favorite outfit.
I know, it's really cool. and you know, like if that's gonna help him get to his target, then he's gonna do it. And I think that's really what works. So like our job as level designers, well, used to be my job, their job. I mean, like for working on Hitman, your job as a level designer is really to try and create these social scenes, like these social situations, and have the player with 47 try and engage in those and try to figure those out and plan for them, and also get surprised, and then you have to make a new plan. That's going to happen quite a lot, and that's what also
and not panic.
And I think that's what makes it fun. And watching people play Sapienza was really interesting because they would respect the rules, the social rules of the different areas, even though it had no effect. Didn't matter that they would never run in a church, but it was the most natural thing to do, right? So you could just see that that people would just like click. They would just like whoop, go into look at ice cream mode, or I'm in a church mode, or like without thinking. And I think that's very strong.
It's really immersive in a way, because when you play it, and you also, because the system supported when you start running, like the AI is like, what you doing? Kind of,
yeah,
it's kind of suspicious. So you don't want to be suspicious. So you kind of role play basically with 1847.
And I love that part, like just role playing, even though it didn't really matter. And like in those little details that was added, like for instance, if you idle, there's an idle animation for the different disguises that you're wearing that just kind of fit. So like if you're a bodyguard, you're gonna start like doing the earpiece and the turn thing, and like and you're gonna have these little animations and little hints helping you, telling you you're blending in. It's working.
As a level designer on levels like that are huge and have all these systems, do you also get to work with all that spaghetti code of AI and events and loops and whatever goes behind it? So what happens if you don't do one thing, or you do one thing, and how does that influence the other thing? And like all of that, do you get to work
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, God.
I can imagine that can be like a really difficult, like how do you even remember what happens and keep all that information like technically, and like as a developer, how do you make sure it's all separate in your head and you know what you're doing basically at any time?
I'm not even sure how to answer that. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's like the insane setups that are in those games, oh God, especially going back to some of the old levels that a lot of designers have worked on, because it is extremely complex and it is mostly in your head the most of the time, and it's really hard then when you're getting into someone else's setup, which you will probably have to do at a point. If a level takes longer than a year, then things happen. It's an organic organization, and all of a sudden you're just sitting with someone else's work, and it feels like you're looking into someone else's brain mess. And some people just have to kind of redo it in their own way to just make sense of it. But it is a lot. It is really a lot sometimes. And there's so much stuff you have to consider. And I mean, as you get more experience, there are just some things you just avoid, because I'm not doing that again. Like it's too crazy, and we haven't found a good way to fix it. So no, I'm gonna be the one who's gonna fix it. And there's so many things where it's a custom setup, like where you think it's an AI, but it's not, because that didn't work. So it's yeah.
I can't even imagine going away for a vacation while working on the game for a week, and then you come back, it's like, what was I doing?
Yeah, like imagine.
Where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. I went on maternity leave and came back, and it was just like, never mind. I'll do something else.
You have to start small and just go like, I'll start with a nerd. node and see what that connects to, and then I'll read this massive spaghetti.
Yeah, like it's really like playing a puzzle game, and thank God I like puzzles, or I would just have gone insane. But yeah,
I'm assuming communication must be like super important. Maybe I'm talking about like even comments in the code, like why did you decide to connect these nodes here? It's like, oh, because if the guard does this, something happens, so I had to put this, and someone else comes 2 months later and just, if you don't have that in, they change it and that bug reappears in your list. Like,
yeah,
stuff like that. I can imagine it can be like working just on linear, like simpler levels, and you already can forget, or you have to explain things to your teammates. Like working on a Hitman level, I don't even know how it's released.
I don't know either. Like it's we try to leave like comments for each other, but the problem is it changes so much that the comment that you made doesn't make sense anymore. It just seems like mad ramblings, like and you have like this like delete later, I may not work with blah blah blah, and you're just like, well, I don't know what, because everything is so connected. If you break one thing, like the whole thing just stops working.
House of Cards.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
one goes, everything goes.
I imagine that can be satisfying in some ways. So if something simple breaks and everybody panics, a build breaks, and you're like, oh, that's okay, that's just the value. I know already where to fix it. It's just fix.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yes.
Where people who don't know what's happening, for them it can be huge, breaking thing. For you, it's like, oh no, I know what's happening exactly. I know the if here, the if statement there, I can fix it.
That happened like all the time. Like all the targets are just like walking around in circles. Like, it's just because you didn't do the thing.
No.
Relax, everyone relax.
Now with the massive board of post-its saying like, do not do this thing because everyone goes nuts on Sapienza.
Exactly. So the way that NPCs are being set up, like different characters in the level doing stuff, is having these little drama situations where they would have like a priority. So for instance, Novikov, the target in Paris, he would have his core loop, which is something that he would always default back to. And then he would have like these higher priority dramas that would like drag him out. So that meant if it became really complex, you would have a priority drama that would be, I don't know, 12 and 132 and 44, and it would just go more and more, like it would just keep going. And if you had to add like a drama in between somewhere, you would have to change the order. Then this is 62, and then this is it was just completely insane. And then at a point, it was changed to nodes, so we could just drag nodes between the different drama situations, so it could just figure out which number it was on its own. But that broke a lot. Just changing a drama slightly would just break things. Yeah, like why is he going there now? Like I don't know. And you just follow your target around. Like what's he doing? Like, oh, he wants to go have a meeting with someone. Oh, okay. Like it really feels that way sometimes. It's crazy.
You're saying that by changing a drama, you've created more drama, and you're complaining that you've made these semi-sentient beings that run around, have their own priority, but you're angry because they're doing that. I think on this note,
insane.
Before we go even crazier, I think on this note we have to say, Mette, this has been a lovely, insightful interview. You have to come back
I would love to.
When the child is grown and you've fully programmed it with its dramas and its core loops.
Yes.
Once all the core loops have been programmed into.
Yeah, drink wine and all that stuff. Yeah.
That'll be excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thanks everybody else, and thank you to our listeners. Catch us in the next episode that's coming out soon. Bye.
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 The Level Design Podcast has been a Command Studio production. Our editor is Matthew Lever, and this episode has been produced by Bridie Rose.